The great hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as the emergency transmission crackled through the communication array. The massive chamber, built to hold representatives from over 200 species, had never witnessed such desperate urgency in a message. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a being that most recognized as Zilani, tall, graceful creatures with translucent blue skin and large, peaceful eyes. "Citizens of the galaxy," the Zilani speaker began, his voice trembling with barely controlled fear. "I am High Counselor Vextar of the Zilani Federation. Our worlds burn. Our people die. The Korthak Empire has broken the sacred peace that has held for 3,000 years. A collective gasp arose from the assembled delegates. The Korthak Empire was known throughout the galaxy as the Iron Fist that no one dared to challenge. Their reputation was built on the bones of conquered civilizations and the ashes of destroyed worlds. For over a millennium, they had expanded their territory through brutal conquest, leaving behind only servitude or extinction. The hologram showed images that made even the most hardened warriors among the council recoil. Zilani cities reduced to smoldering ruins, orbital platforms torn apart by massive weapons, refugee ships fleeing through space, many never reaching safety. The Korthak warships moved through Zilani space like predators among helpless prey. They came without warning, Vextar continued, his image flickering as explosions rocked whatever facility he was broadcasting from. 3 of our core worlds have fallen. 7 billion souls lost to their fury. Our defense fleets were swept aside like dust before a storm. Our technology, our wisdom, our peaceful ways. None of it matters against their hunger for destruction. The Zilani had always been respected throughout the galaxy for their contributions to science and culture. They had developed medical technologies that extended life for dozens of species. Their philosophers had written the basis for galactic law. Their artists created beauty that transcended species barriers. They were builders, healers, teachers, everything the galaxy valued. They were also completely unprepared for war. "We have tried everything." The High Counselor's voice broke slightly. "Our shields failed. Our weapons were too weak. Our strategies were meaningless against enemies who fight without honor or mercy. The Korthak do not seek to conquer us. They seek to erase us completely from existence." Around the council chamber, delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Rigelian ambassador's crystalline form dimmed with worry. The gaseous nebula collective's representatives swirled in agitated patterns. Even the proud Centaurian military attaché looked disturbed by the footage playing before them. "We make this plea to all civilized species of the galaxy," Vextar said, his image now clearly showing the sounds of battle growing closer. "Any civilization willing to provide military aid will be granted access to our complete technological archives. Our medical databases, our scientific research spanning 10,000 years. We offer everything we have built, everything we are, in exchange for help." The transmission showed more scenes of destruction. Korthak soldiers, massive reptilian beings covered in natural armor, moved through Zilani settlements with methodical brutality. Their weapons did not simply kill, they obliterated. Their ships did not merely destroy buildings, they turned entire cities to glass. This was not conquest. This was genocide carried out with industrial efficiency. "We estimate 6 days before our remaining defenses collapse," Vextar said, as explosions grew louder in the background. "After that, 40 billion Zilani will join their brothers and sisters in death. We do not ask for your sacrifice. We do not demand your blood. We simply beg that someone, anyone, remember that we once existed and tried to make the galaxy a better place." The transmission cut to scenes from the front lines. Korthak dreadnoughts, each the size of a small moon, pounded Zilani defensive stations with weapons that could crack planets. The Zilani ships, elegant and graceful, died like butterflies in a hurricane. Their crews fought bravely, but bravery meant nothing against such overwhelming force. If any species can hear this message and possesses both the strength and the will to stand against darkness, we offer not just our gratitude but our eternal service. The Zilani Federation pledges itself completely to any who would help us survive this nightmare. The final images showed Korthak ground forces advancing across a Zilani world. Where they passed, nothing remained alive. Buildings were systematically demolished. Parks and gardens were burned. Even the artwork on walls was destroyed with careful precision. The Korthak were not just conquering, they were erasing all evidence that the Zilani had ever existed. The transmission ended with High Counselor Vextar looking directly into the camera. Behind him, the sounds of his world dying grew ever louder. We are a peaceful people who never learned to hate, never learned to kill, never learned to destroy. Perhaps that was our greatest weakness, but we learned to love, to build, to heal. If that is not enough to earn aid from our fellow beings, then we will die knowing we remained true to what we believed made life worth living. The hologram faded to black, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. For long moments, no one spoke. The weight of what they had witnessed pressed down on the assembly like a physical force. Finally, the council speaker, an ancient ethereal whose species had guided galactic law for millennia, called for responses. The silence stretched on. One by one, ambassadors began to stand and offered their regrets. The Rigellian Confederation expressed sympathy, but explained their military was purely defensive. The Centaurian Republic acknowledged the tragedy, but noted their fleet was committed to border security. The Vegan Alliance offered humanitarian aid for refugees but could not risk war with the Korthak Empire. Each excuse was reasonable. Each explanation was logical. Each response was the political equivalent of a death sentence for the Zilani Federation. The Korthak Empire had spent centuries building their reputation as an unstoppable force. No species had ever successfully resisted them for longer than a few months. Their military doctrine was simple and effective. Make the cost of resistance so high that submission became preferable to annihilation. It had worked against every civilization they had encountered. Hours passed as delegate after delegate declined to help. Some offered token supplies or safe passage for refugees. Others simply expressed formal condolences for what they saw as an inevitable outcome. None offered military assistance. The council session was about to adjourn when a new signal appeared on the communication array. The signature was unfamiliar, coming from a system that was not part of any known civilization. The signal was crude, transmitted on basic frequencies using simple encoding that any species could decode. Galactic Council. The message began in heavily accented Standard Galactic. This is Ambassador Chen Wei of the United Nations of Earth. We have received the Zilani distress call. Humanity formally volunteers to provide military assistance to the Zilani Federation. We request immediate coordination of our response with your organization. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Earth was not in any galactic database. Humanity was unknown to civilized space. The very idea that some primitive species from an uncharted system would volunteer for a mission that advanced civilizations. Refuse seemed absurd. The council speaker called for order and transmitted a response asking for clarification. The reply came quickly. We understand the risks, Ambassador Chen Wei responded. We understand the enemy. We understand that others have declined to help. Humanity chooses to stand with the Zilani Federation. We will depart for your coordinates immediately. As the message ended, delegates began checking their databases for any information about this mysterious species called humanity. What they found in the preliminary scans would soon change everything they thought they knew about the galaxy and their place in it. The Zilani had pleaded for allies, but something else was coming to answer their call. The Galactic Council emergency session had been running for 18 hours when the human ships appeared at the designated meeting coordinates. The gathered fleet of council observers hung in space like glittering jewels, elegant vessels with smooth curves and gleaming hulls that spoke of advanced technology and peaceful intentions. The human ships looked like they had been built for War Captain Torres of the GCS. Harmony was the first to spot them on his sensors. By the Seven Suns, he whispered to his bridge crew, all members of different species who had served together for decades. What are those things? The human vessels were angular and brutal-looking. Their hulls were dark metal covered in what appeared to be additional armor plating. Strange protrusions extended from their surfaces. Weapon systems that seemed designed with no concern for aesthetics. While council ships were built to inspire wonder and demonstrate technological achievement, these craft were clearly built to kill. They looked like flying weapons, his tactical officer, a Centaurian named Kex, observed with professional interest. I count at least 40 different weapon systems on their lead vessel alone. Their shield generators are... He paused, running calculations. I cannot identify their shield technology. It does not match any known configuration. Ambassador Chen Wei's voice came over the communication channel with crisp efficiency. Council vessels, this is UNS Defiance. Request permission to dock with your command ship for diplomatic talks. The council speaker, aboard the massive diplomatic vessel Unity of Worlds, granted permission after a brief consultation with his advisors. They were curious about these humans, though many privately doubted that any primitive species could meaningfully contribute to the crisis. The human shuttle that docked with the Unity of Worlds was as utilitarian as their warships. Where council shuttles were works of art designed to impress other species with their beauty and technological sophistication, the human craft looked like it had been built in a factory for mass production. Ambassador Chen Wei emerged from the shuttle wearing a simple blue uniform with minimal decoration. She was accompanied by two other humans, a tall man in military dress and a woman carrying what appeared to be data storage devices. The assembled council representatives, numbering over 50 individuals from various species, waited in the great reception hall. The first thing that struck the council delegates was how the humans moved. Other species walked with the careful grace of beings who had evolved on worlds where survival was mostly assured. The humans moved like predators, alert, balanced, ready for trouble even in this diplomatic setting. Honored delegates, Ambassador Chen began, speaking without any of the formal ceremony that usually marked council proceedings. We understand you have questions about humanity's offer to assist the Zelani Federation. We are here to answer those questions and coordinate our response. Councillor Vexenar of the Rigelian Confederation was the first to speak. His crystalline form chimed softly as he communicated. With respect, Ambassador Chen, our records show no previous contact with your species. Earth does not appear in any of our stellar charts. How do we know your people possess the capability to challenge the Korthak Empire? General Martinez, the tall human in military uniform, stepped forward. Counselor, we have studied your databases on the Korthak military capabilities. We have analyzed their tactics, their technology, and their previous campaigns. Based on this analysis, we believe we can provide effective assistance. Analyzed? The question came from Ambassador Thexera of the Centaurian Republic, whose species possessed one of the most advanced militaries in known space. The Korthak Empire has conquered 47 civilizations in the past millennium. Their technology is centuries ahead of most species. Their warriors are bred for combat from birth. What could a previously unknown species possibly offer that we cannot? General Martinez exchanged a look with Ambassador Chen before responding. Perhaps it would be better if we showed you. The human delegation activated a holographic projector. The display that appeared showed Earth, a blue and green world that immediately caught the attention of every xenobiologist in the room. Several delegates gasped audibly. Your home world is a Class 12 death world, Dr. Kelnara of the Ethereal Council said in amazement. We have observed similar planets, but no sentient species has ever evolved on such a hostile environment. The hologram showed scenes from Earth that seemed impossible to the gathered aliens. Massive storms that could destroy cities, earthquakes that split continents, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, predators with claws and teeth that could tear through metal, and everywhere, humans not just surviving, but thriving. Your people evolved on a world trying to kill them, Councillor Vexenar observed with something approaching awe. Every day, General Martinez confirmed, we learned to fight hurricanes, survive ice ages, and deal with predators that hunted us for food. We learned to work together because the alternative was extinction. The presentation continued, showing human history. Wars that lasted decades, conflicts involving billions of people, weapons that could destroy entire continents. Technologies developed specifically for killing other humans more efficiently. The council delegates watched in fascinated horror as humanity's violent past unfolded before them. You fight each other, Ambassador Thexara stated with disbelief. Your own species. We did, Ambassador Chen acknowledged. For thousands of years we fought over resources, territory, ideas, and sometimes just because we were afraid of each other. We learned to fight in every environment our world could produce. We learned to kill with everything from sharpened sticks to weapons that could split atoms. Dr. Kelnar's ethereal form flickered with concern. This seems to suggest your species is inherently violent. No, General Martinez replied firmly. It suggests we are inherently survivors. We fight when we have to fight. We kill when we have to kill, but we also know when to stop fighting and when to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The presentation shifted to show humanity's space program. Where other species had developed space travel as a natural extension of their technological growth, humans had literally strapped themselves to controlled explosives. and launched themselves into the void through sheer determination. "Your space technology is primitive," observed Captain Torres, studying the human ships visible through the observation ports. "Our weapons technology is not," General Martinez replied simply. Ambassador Chen activated another display. "The Korthak Empire relies on three primary advantages: superior technology, overwhelming force, and psychological warfare designed to break enemy morale before serious fighting begins. We believe we can neutralize all three advantages." "How?" The question came from multiple delegates simultaneously. "Technology advantage becomes meaningless when your enemy refuses to fight conventionally," General Martinez explained. "Overwhelming force becomes a liability when your enemy is willing to accept casualties that you consider unthinkable. Psychological warfare fails when your enemy has already survived everything their own world could do to destroy them." The human presentation showed footage of Korthak military operations, the same scenes of destruction that had horrified the Council in the Zalani distress call, but this time, human military analysts provided commentary that chilled the listening delegates. "Standard orbital bombardment pattern," General Martinez noted as Korthak ships destroyed a city, effective against fixed positions but vulnerable to mobile response. "Their ground forces advance in formation, suitable for fighting other civilized armies but poorly adapted for asymmetric warfare. Their logistics require massive supply chains that extend across multiple star systems." "You speak of fighting them as if you have experience," Dr. Kelnera observed. "We have experience fighting ourselves," Ambassador Chen replied. "And humans are the most dangerous predators our world ever produced." The meeting continued for hours as the Council delegates tried to understand these strange beings who had volunteered for what everyone else considered a suicide mission. The humans answered every question with calm professionalism, but their responses often left the aliens more confused than before. Finally, the Council speaker called for a recess to discuss the human offer privately. As the delegates filed out, Ambassador Chen turned to General Martinez. "How do you think they will vote?" she asked. The general watched the aliens leaving. Beings from advanced civilizations who had never known real hardship, never faced extinction, never learned that sometimes survival required embracing the very darkness you hope to avoid. "They will let us try," he said. "They think we are going to die anyway, so there is no risk in letting us make the attempt. They do not understand yet that we are not going to the Zalani system to die." "What are we going to do there?" General Martinez smiled grimly. "We are going to teach the Korthak Empire why you should never threaten something a human has decided to protect." The human fleet reached the edge of Zalani space 3 days after leaving the Council meeting point. What they found there exceeded even their worst expectations. The Korthak Empire had not simply invaded, they had begun systematic extermination. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance, watching the tactical displays update with grim efficiency. Around her, the command crew worked with the quiet intensity that humans had perfected through centuries of warfare. No wasted motion, no unnecessary communication, just professional soldiers doing the job they had trained their entire lives to perform. "Status report," she ordered, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets through the worst conflicts in human history. 16 Zalani worlds under active bombardment, reported Commander Jackson. The fleet intelligence officer. 7 already sterilized. The Korthak have deployed approximately 2,000 vessels across the region. They are not bothering with occupation forces, this is pure extermination. Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka, the xenobiology specialist, looked up from her analysis station. "Admiral, I am reading massive biological warfare deployments on 3 worlds. The Korthak are using weapons designed to target Zalani DNA specifically. Nothing else on those planets will survive." Admiral Chen absorbed this information without visible emotion. Around her, the bridge crew continued their work with the same calm professionalism. To an outside observer, they might have seemed callous in the face of such massive death. But humans had learned long ago that emotion was a luxury that commanders could not afford, when lives depended on clear thinking. "Dr. Rodriguez, what is your assessment of Korthak military capabilities?" Dr. Elena Rodriguez had spent the journey from Earth studying every piece of data the Galactic Council possessed on the Korthak Empire. Her analysis would form the basis of humanity's strategy. The Korthak military doctrine is built around 3 principles: technological superiority, overwhelming force, and psychological dominance. They have never faced sustained resistance because most civilizations surrender after witnessing their initial displays of power. The main screen displayed a breakdown of Korthak forces. Their ships were massive, bristling with energy weapons that could crack continents. Their soldiers were genetically enhanced for combat, standing over 3 meters tall and covered in natural armor that could stop most known weapons. Their technology was indeed centuries ahead of most galactic civilizations. However, Dr. Rodriguez continued, their doctrine has significant weaknesses when facing an opponent willing to accept massive casualties and fight unconventionally. They are structured to fight other civilized armies, not resistance movements or asymmetric warfare. General Martinez, who had remained quiet during the briefing, finally spoke. Doctor, show them the comparison analysis. The display changed to show Korthak capabilities alongside human military history. The contrast was startling. Where the Korthak had fought 47 civilizations over a millennium, humans had fought thousands of conflicts in the same period. Where the Korthak had perfected weapons for defeating energy shields and armor, humans had developed tactics for fighting enemies with superior technology. The Korthak have never faced an enemy that considered their strongest weapons to be minor inconveniences. Dr. Rodriguez explained. Orbital bombardment? We survived nuclear war. Biological weapons? We have fought through chemical and biological warfare for centuries. Psychological warfare? We learned to function in combat zones that would drive most species insane. Captain Sarah Kim, commander of the Human Marine Forces, stepped forward. Admiral, request permission to brief the command staff on our ground warfare capabilities. Admiral Chen nodded, and Captain Kim activated a new display. What appeared was footage from human military training exercises that would have horrified the peaceful species of the Galactic Council. Human Marines trained to fight in every environment our world can produce, Captain Kim explained. We fight in the depths of oceans under crushing pressure. We fight in the vacuum of space without life support. We fight in temperatures that would freeze solid or boil away most other species. We fight in radiation levels that would be fatal to most galactic civilizations. The footage showed human soldiers doing things that seemed impossible to beings from more hospitable worlds. Marines fighting hand-to-hand combat while wearing full environmental suits. Soldiers continuing to operate after injuries that would incapacitate most species. Entire units functioning in environments where a single mistake meant instant death. The Korthak enhanced their soldiers genetically for combat, Captain Kim continued, but they enhanced them for fighting other Korthak or similar species. They have never faced an enemy that evolved specifically to survive in environments trying to kill them every day. Admiral Chen studied the tactical displays showing current Korthak positions. Their fleet was spread across the Zilani system in a standard conquest formation, efficient for overwhelming a traditional enemy, but vulnerable to unconventional attack. Commander Jackson, what is our intelligence on Korthak command structure? Highly centralized, Admiral. Each fleet answers directly to a war leader who reports to the High Command. They coordinate through quantum communication networks that they consider unbreachable. Their doctrine assumes that controlling communication means controlling the battlefield. Admiral Chen smiled grimly. Dr. Rodriguez, do the Korthak have any experience with opponents who can operate without centralized command? None, Admiral. Every civilization they have conquered relied on coordinated fleet actions and traditional military hierarchy. The concept of independent units operating without constant communication is unknown to them. The briefing continued as human analysts dissected every aspect of Korthak military operations. What emerged was a picture of an enemy that was indeed powerful and advanced, but also completely unprepared for the type of warfare that humans had perfected through necessity. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Tanaka spoke up. I am receiving a transmission from the Zilani Resistance Forces. The main screen activated to show High Counselor Vextar, the same Zilani leader who had made the original plea for help. He looked haggard and desperate, broadcasting from what appeared to be an underground bunker. Behind him, the sounds of battle were constant. Human fleet, we detect your arrival at the edge of our system, Vextar said, his voice carrying a mixture of hope and disbelief. We had not expected anyone to actually come. The Korthak forces are overwhelming. We have perhaps 2 days before our last defensive positions fall. Admiral Chen stepped forward. High Counselor, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Fleet. We are here to provide military assistance as promised. What is your current tactical situation? Vextar's expression showed confusion. Admiral, with respect, the Korthak Empire has deployed over 2,000 warships to our system. They possess weapons that can destroy planets. Their soldiers are genetically engineered for combat. How can your fleet of, I count approximately 200 ships, hope to succeed where our defenses have failed? High Counselor, Admiral Chen replied calmly. Your people defended your worlds the way civilized beings should defend them. You fought honorably, following the rules of warfare that govern conflicts between rational species. You tried to minimize casualties and preserve what you had built. She paused, looking directly into the camera with the expression of someone who had seen humanity's worst and best. We are not going to fight honorably. We are not going to follow civilized rules of warfare. We are not going to try to preserve anything except your people's lives. The Korthak Empire is about to learn the difference between conquering a civilization and fighting a species that learned warfare from a world trying to kill them. The transmission from Vextar showed his confusion. I do not understand. How will you defeat their superior numbers and technology? General Martinez stepped into view. High Counselor, the Korthak have more ships than us. They have better weapons than us. They have stronger soldiers than us. But they have never fought an enemy that is willing to do whatever it takes to win. They have never faced opponents who consider their own lives less important than completing the mission. Admiral Chen turned to her command staff. All ships prepare for combat operations. Rules of engagement are simple. Anything that threatens Zelani civilians is a target. We are not here to defeat the Korthak Empire. We are here to make them understand that some things are too dangerous to threaten. As the human fleet moved deeper into Zelani space, their sensors detected the massive Korthak armada spread across the system. The enemy outnumbered them 10-1. The enemy possessed superior technology. The enemy had never lost a military campaign, but the enemy had never fought humans. In the cargo bays of the human ships, Marines checked their equipment one final time. Weapons designed for killing other humans in the most hostile environments imaginable. Armor built to function in the vacuum of space or the crushing depths of Earth's oceans. Soldiers trained from childhood to function in situations where survival was measured in minutes, and victory required accepting casualties that other species would consider unthinkable. The Korthak Empire was about to discover that there was something in the galaxy more dangerous than their advanced technology and genetically enhanced warriors. They were about to meet the first Korthak war leader to encounter human forces was Thakmor the Destroyer, veteran of 37 conquest campaigns. His flagship, the Endless Hunger, was a massive dreadnought that had personally obliterated the capital worlds of 12 different civilizations. When his sensors detected the approaching human fleet, he felt only contempt for the primitive vessels daring to challenge Korthak's supremacy. Analyze their technology, Thakmor ordered his bridge crew, confident that this would be another quick demonstration of Korthak's superiority. War leader, their ships appear to use crude chemical propulsion and kinetic weapons, reported his tactical officer. Their hulls are simple metal alloys. No energy shields detected. Their largest vessel is 1/5 the size of our smallest destroyer. Thakmor's lipless mouth curved in what passed for a smile among his species. Signal all units. We will demonstrate our power with a single decisive strike. Target their command vessel and obliterate it. The rest will surrender when they see the futility of resistance. The Korthak response was everything Admiral Chen had expected. Massive energy beams lanced across space toward the UNS Defiance, weapons that could vaporize a city-sized target. But the human flagship was no longer where the Korthak sensors showed it to be. Evasive maneuvers complete, reported Navigator Liu. Enemy targeting systems could not compensate for our acceleration curve. The Korthak had built their weapons to fight enemies who moved predictably, limited by the same gravitational forces that affected their own massive ships. They had never encountered vessels designed by a species that strapped themselves to explosive devices just to escape their home planet's gravity well. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display as her fleet scattered into attack formations that would have been impossible for ships carrying species evolved on gentler worlds. All units initiate Operation Deathworld. Show them what happens when predators get angry. The human response began with the UNS Terror, a heavy cruiser commanded by Captain Maria Santos. Instead of engaging the Korthak fleet at long range as expected, the Terror accelerated directly toward the enemy formation at speeds that should have killed everyone aboard. "Kinetic bombardment, full spread," Captain Santos ordered as her ship screamed through the Korthak formation. Where Korthak ships fired energy beams that announced their presence, the Terror fired chunks of metal accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. Simple, primitive, and absolutely devastating. The Korthak energy shields, designed to deflect advanced energy weapons, proved useless against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. 3 Korthak destroyers simply ceased to exist as the kinetic rounds punched through them like paper. "Impossible," War Leader Thakmor hissed as he watched his ships being destroyed by weapons that appeared in no civilized arsenal. "How are they accelerating at those speeds without killing their own crews?" His question was answered when Korthak boarding parties finally managed to breach a damaged human vessel. The security footage from the boarding action was transmitted throughout the Korthak fleet and created chaos in the command structure. The human crew was still fighting. Not just fighting, they were fighting effectively in a damaged ship that was venting atmosphere, with radiation levels that should have been lethal, and gravitational forces that should have crushed their bones. The boarding party of genetically enhanced Korthak warriors found themselves facing humans in environmental suits who moved and fought as if the hostile conditions were perfectly normal. "Boarding action, Deck 7, reported Sergeant Johnson over the combat communication network. His voice was calm despite the fact that he was fighting in near-vacuum conditions that would incapacitate most galactic species. "Enemy forces are adapting slower than expected to zero-gravity combat. The Korthak warriors, bred for combat, were indeed adapting. But they had been bred for combat on planets with standard gravity, breathing standard atmosphere, facing enemies with similar physical limitations. They had never trained to fight opponents who could function normally in the vacuum of space." Captain Santos watched her crew repel the boarding action while her ship continued its attack run. "Engineering, how long until we can restore atmosphere to the compromised sections?" "Estimate 40 minutes, Captain," came the reply from Chief Engineer Park. "But life support is functional in the sealed sections." "Negative. Keep those sections vented. It gives us a tactical advantage." The Korthak monitoring the battle could not comprehend what they were witnessing. These humans were intentionally maintaining conditions that would kill most species, using their own damaged ship as a weapon against enemies who needed normal environmental conditions to function. Across the battle zone, similar scenes played out as human tactics proved incomprehensible to Korthak commanders trained in civilized warfare. The UNS Determination allowed itself to be caught in a Korthak tractor beam, then activated engines that should have torn the ship apart. Instead of being captured, the human vessel used the tractor beam as an anchor point to slingshot directly into the Korthak cruiser that had trapped it. The resulting collision destroyed both ships, but the humans had evacuated their crew and escape. Pods designed to function in environments that would kill most life forms. The Korthak crew, expecting their superior technology to protect them, died when their own ship's hull was breached by an enemy willing to sacrifice their vessel for tactical advantage. "War Leader," the Korthak communication officer reported, with poorly concealed panic, "we are receiving distress calls from the planetary assault forces." The main display showed the surface of Zelani Prime, where Korthak ground forces had been conducting systematic extermination operations. They had been winning effortlessly against Zelani resistance until human dropships began landing in the middle of their formations. The dropships themselves were weapons of terror. Where civilized species developed careful landing procedures designed to preserve equipment and minimize casualties, human military doctrine assumed that any landing might be contested by hostile forces. The dropships came down like meteorites, using retro thrusters only at the last second to avoid total destruction. Major William Thompson's voice crackled over the communication network as his Marines deployed directly into a Korthak-controlled city. "Alpha Company, sweep and clear. Rules of engagement: anything shooting at civilians or us dies, everything else we can sort out later." The Korthak ground forces were genetically enhanced soldiers standing over 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor, and armed with weapons that could punch through tank armor. They were the ultimate infantry, bred specifically for dominating battlefields against other military forces. They had never fought enemies who brought the entire concept of environmental warfare to ground combat. The human Marines moved through the city using tactics that the Korthak could not counter because they had never encountered them before. Humans fought from inside buildings that were on fire. They set up firing positions in areas contaminated with chemical weapons. They used the city's damaged infrastructure as weapons, turning every destroyed building into a fortress and every flooded street into a killing ground. "Contact Grid 77, reported Corporal Davis as her squad engaged Korthak soldiers in a shopping district that was partially collapsed and filled with toxic smoke. "Enemy forces are withdrawing from contaminated areas. Pursue and engage," Major Thompson ordered. "Use the contamination as cover." The Korthak soldiers were retreating not from human firepower, but from environmental conditions that humans considered merely inconvenient. Smoke that burned Korthak respiratory systems was filtered out by human breathing apparatus. Radiation that sickened enhanced Korthak physiology was within tolerance levels for humans trained to fight in post-nuclear battlefields. Most disturbing to the Korthak command was that the humans seemed to thrive in conditions of chaos and destruction. Where other species fought to preserve civilization and minimize damage, humans appeared to view destruction as a tactical tool to be employed without hesitation. The turning point came when human special forces units began boarding Korthak command vessels. The infiltration tactics used were beyond anything in Korthak military experience. Human commandos approached through space itself, using maneuvering units that would have been considered suicide devices by any rational species. Lieutenant Sarah, Kim led the assault on war leader Thakmor's flagship, the Endless Hunger. Her team moved through the ship's outer hull like parasites, cutting through armor plating with tools designed for operating in the most hostile environments imaginable. "Breach charges set," she reported as her team prepared to enter the Korthak vessel. Environmental suits showed toxic atmosphere and elevated radiation, standard Tuesday conditions. The human assault team entered the Korthak flagship through holes they cut in the outer hull, fighting their way through corridors filled with atmosphere that would have been lethal to most species. The Korthak crew, even with their enhancements, found themselves fighting enemies who were completely unaffected by conditions that degraded Korthak combat effectiveness. War leader Thakmor watched his command sent. The surrender of the Korthak Empire did not come through a grand space battle or the destruction of their homeworld. It came through a single transmission from High War Leader Kexthan, Supreme Commander of all Korthak military forces, broadcasting from his command bunker deep within the most heavily fortified world in their empire. "Human commanders," the message began, with a tone that would have been impossible from any Korthak leader just days before. "The Korthak Empire requests immediate cessation of hostilities and formal negotiations for surrender. Terms." Admiral Chen received the transmission aboard the UNS Defiance while her fleet held position around Zalani Prime, now free of Korthak forces. Around her, the command staff maintained their professional composure, but she could see the quiet satisfaction in their eyes. They had accomplished something that 50 galactic civilizations had considered impossible. "High War Leader Kexthan," Admiral Chen replied, her voice carrying the same calm authority that had guided human forces through the campaign. "The human fleet will accept Korthak's surrender under the following conditions: immediate withdrawal of all forces from Zalani space, return of all captured Zalani civilians, and formal recognition of the Zalani Federation's sovereignty." The response came after only a few minutes, remarkably fast for a military empire that usually deliberated for hours before making strategic decisions. "All conditions are acceptable," High War Leader Kexthan replied. "Human Admiral, we request only safe passage for our forces during withdrawal. We had not understood the nature of your species. We wish no further conflict with beings who consider our ultimate weapons to be minor inconveniences." The formal surrender took place on Zalani Prime, in the capital city that just days before had been under Korthak bombardment. High Counselor Vextar stood beside Admiral Chen as representatives from across the galaxy gathered to witness an event that would reshape galactic politics forever. The Galactic Council delegation, led by the ancient ethereal speaker, arrived aboard ships that gleamed like jewels against the stars. They had come expecting to witness the aftermath of a heroic but futile last stand, Instead, they found a human fleet in complete control of Zilani space and a Korthak empire in full retreat. Admiral Chen, the council speaker said, his ethereal form flickering with what humans were learning to recognize as confusion among his species. We have monitored the communications traffic. The Korthak Empire has agreed to surrender? How is this possible? General Martinez, standing beside the admiral, gestured toward the tactical displays showing the final positions of the conflict. Council speaker, the Korthak military doctrine was designed to fight civilized enemies who valued preservation of life and infrastructure above military victory. They were not prepared for opponents who viewed their own ships as expendable weapons and considered environmental hazards to be tactical advantages. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward with a detailed analysis of the campaign. The turning point came when human forces demonstrated that Korthak's superior technology became irrelevant when faced with enemies willing to fight in conditions that degraded Korthak combat effectiveness, while having no impact on human operations. Captain Sarah Kim recently returned from leading the Special Forces operations that had captured 3 Korthak command vessels, added her perspective. Their soldiers were enhanced for fighting other enhanced soldiers in controlled conditions. They had never encountered enemies who trained to fight in the worst conditions their homeworld could produce. The council speaker processed this information with visible difficulty. You defeated them by fighting in ways that would be considered unacceptable by civilized military standards. We defeated them by fighting the way humans fight, Admiral Chen replied simply. We accepted casualties that other species would consider unthinkable. We used tactics that other species would consider too dangerous. We operated in environments that other species would consider impossible. The Korthak were not prepared for enemies who had learned warfare from a world that spent millions of years trying to kill everything that lived on. High Counselor Vextar spoke for the first time since the council delegation had arrived. Honored speaker, the humans saved our people by doing what no civilized species could do. They sacrificed their own safety to protect strangers they had never met. They fought our enemies with a ferocity that matched their compassion for the innocent. The formal surrender ceremony was unlike anything in galactic history. Where previous Korthak defeats had involved the complete destruction of their military forces, this surrender saw intact Korthak fleets withdrawing in good order under human escort. The humans had not sought to destroy their enemies, only to make clear that continuing the fight would be futile. High War Leader Kexthan himself attended the ceremony, accompanied by a small honor guard of Korthak officers. The sight of these massive, genetically enhanced warriors standing respectfully before human commanders sent ripples of amazement through the gathered representatives. Human Admiral, Kexthan said, his voice carrying tones that universal translators struggled to process. The Korthak Empire acknowledges that we have encountered something beyond our experience. Your species fights not for conquest or glory, but for protection of those who cannot protect themselves. This is unknown to us. Admiral Chen studied the towering Korthak leader. High War Leader, your empire built its reputation on overwhelming force applied against those who could not effectively resist. You never learned what happens when that force encounters something that grew strong by resisting forces that you cannot imagine. The implications of humanity's victory began to spread across the galaxy within hours of the surrender. Species that had lived in fear of Korthak expansion for centuries suddenly found themselves in a galaxy where the seemingly unstoppable empire had been defeated by a previously unknown species using weapons and tactics that challenged every assumption about modern warfare. The economic impact was immediate. Civilizations that had paid tribute to the Korthak Empire ceased their payments. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to Korthak raids reopened. Entire sectors that had been written off as Korthak territory began planning for independence. But the political impact was even more profound. The Galactic Council, which had governed through consensus and careful diplomacy for millennia, suddenly found itself dealing with a species that considered military action a viable first option rather than a last resort. The question before us, the council speaker addressed the emergency session convened immediately after the surrender ceremony, is how we integrate a species with such unusual capabilities into galactic civilization. Ambassador Chen Wei, who had remained with the diplomatic corps during the military campaign, stood to address the assembly. Honored speaker, Humanity does not seek integration into existing galactic civilization. We seek to contribute to its evolution. The Korthak Empire existed because civilized species were unwilling to pay the price necessary to stop them. That era has ended. The debate that followed would continue for months, but the essential question was already answered. Humanity had demonstrated that there were forces in the galaxy more dangerous than advanced technology or genetic enhancement. There was determination backed by the willingness to embrace destruction as a tool for protecting creation. Within weeks of the Korthak surrender, requests for human military assistance began arriving from across the galaxy. Species facing piracy, territorial disputes, or aggressive neighbors all sought to employ the services of the beings who had accomplished the impossible. Admiral Chen established humanity's response during a broadcast that reached every civilized world. The human military will provide assistance to any species facing extinction or enslavement. We will not intervene in territorial disputes between civilized peoples. We will not participate in wars of conquest. But any force that threatens the innocent will discover that Earth has sent its children to the stars. And we remember what our world taught us about survival. The Zelani Federation became humanity's first formal ally, offering their advanced technology in exchange for continued protection. But more importantly, they became the first species to understand what humans represented in the galactic order. They are gardeners with the hearts of warriors, High Counselor Vextar explained to the Council. They will let civilizations grow and flourish in peace, but they will destroy anything that threatens to poison the garden they have chosen to protect. The Korthak Empire, reduced to a fraction of its former territory, spent the following years learning to coexist with neighbors who no longer feared them. Some observers noted that the former conquerors seemed almost relieved to abandon their military expansion in favor of peaceful development. But across the galaxy, in the deepest corners where predators had hidden from Korthak attention, word spread about the new power that had emerged from an unknown system. Humanity had announced its presence by protecting the innocent and defeating the unstoppable. The galaxy would never be the same. For the first time in recorded history, the innocent had guardians who were more dangerous than those who would prey upon them. Earth had sent its children to the stars, carrying with them the hard